So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us from all over the Americas. And we are very happy today because we just starting to add to our collection this wonderful DMC, Cultural Cuba, and David Lee, the founder, which I know since many years. And I'm so grateful and very proud to have him in our collection. So David, I know you have a magical destination, mystical, I mean, so much adjective, huh? And today you're gonna just show us a little bit of your Cuba. So David, the screen is all yours.
Okay, absolutely. All right, so I'll share my screen right now, and then for those of you who might have just joined, because we were kind of chatting about it before, I'll try to run through it fairly quickly, and then you won't see me on the screen. I don't know why. I seem to be the only one that this happens to while I go through my presentation, and then I'll come back on and we'll have a nice Q&A, lively conversation. No questions are off limits, that's for sure. So let me just share the screen real quick here.
I have already, Rima was already asking a question. Can you rent a private villa in Cuba now?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we'll tell you
no
more.
Question about it.
But it's, and with David, you're in good hands. I mean, definitely you have nothing to be worried. The clients will be doing whatever. You have access to everything, David. So we can't.
Yes, yes, we don't like to say no. Yes. So we do our best not to, you know, within reason. But all right, so hopefully you see my screen. You should see my logo in the bottom corner. Let me just go to the first slide. So I will tell you that I think I'm being as objective as I possibly can be when I say this, that Cuba is one of the most fascinating places on earth to visit. You know, I didn't choose the travel industry and then pick Cuba. It was completely the other way around. I went to Cuba on a humanitarian trip, and what I discovered there, and let me tell you, I'm a very well-traveled individual. I've been to many countries throughout the world. Travel is certainly a passion, but it is what I discovered in Cuba that made me want to start this business, because literally I just wanted to bring people there. I felt that everyone needs to see this place and experience it and meet the Cuban people. And you know, the fact, especially for the Americas and American clients as well, that this location is 90 miles from, you know, the tip of Florida is absolutely remarkable. Because I'd like to say it is one of the things we say is it's the closest, farthest place you can travel. Literally, you hop on this plane, let's say you're traveling from Miami, and 45 minutes later, you have traveled back 60 years in time to the land of magically enchanted, incredibly talented artists, musicians. The food is incredible, the architecture, the history. Literally, there is something for everyone. And it is, like I said, unlike almost any other destination I've ever been to. And one of the things that I love about it, I've been there over 100 times at this point. We started, you know, doing this business about 9 years ago. I'm never bored. I'm always discovering something new as well. And it is, as I have on here, ideal for everyone, couples, families, wonderful multi-gen, you know, destination, because there's so much that appeals to everyone, from the littler children all the way up to the grandparents. And it's great for, you know, special birthday parties. That's always a big highlight as well. All kinds of special occasions. We'll get into it as we go along. So first of all, why Cultural Cuba? Cuba in general, and some of you on the call may have already been there and have a little more experience with this, but at the present state, you know, it's not really, it doesn't lend itself to a planet on your own kind of destination. It's for Americans especially, because there are some rules and regulations that make it, you know, very difficult for someone to just simply hop on a plane and go over there. But even for anyone coming from the rest of the world, to get the most out of a trip to Cuba, it is extremely important to have a good destination management company that is literally on the ground there to plan these trips. We are completely 100% FIT. Everything we do is custom, private. There's nothing cookie cutter about any of our itineraries. We do not advertise, fixed itinerary trips on specific dates where you would travel with, a group of strangers. 100% of everything we do is custom. Group size can be anything from, literally a solo traveler to, we've done trips with 100 people. But again, they're still custom, completely custom trips. And I'll continue on here. Just to touch on this, because I'm sure there are some US-based travel advisors, and many of you have US clientele. There's a lot of talk about Cuba being difficult from the United States, and there are quote unquote restrictions to travel to Cuba. I want to debunk that right off the bat. Yes, it is one of the few destinations in the world, at this point, probably the only destination in the world where Americans have to follow certain guidelines from the US government in order to travel there legally. But that's kind of where it begins and ends. We handle all of those quote unquote, legalities for you and for your clients. The key thing is that in order to go, you have to go on under some approved itinerary categories. We use support for the Cuban people, and we have from the inception of our business. This is something that we actually is near and dear to our heart because it's the whole reason we created the company. Support for the Cuban people, from the US government's perspective, anybody, really means they want to make sure that the vast majority of money that the clients are spending when they travel to Cuba goes to the people and not to the government. Because as you know, if you look at, it's not a secret that there's no love lost between the US and Cuba. And most of that obviously is based on not only the history, but the fact that we still certainly view Cuba, as the Cuban government, as a socialist regime. But we personally, and not to get into the politics of this, the idea of supporting the Cuban people, that is something, I don't care where what your politics is, it has nothing to do with anything. We now take all of the profits, everything beyond what it costs us to put on our trips, and pump it back into the Cuban people. We support a variety of objectives there, community projects, a preschool for disadvantaged youth from Old Havana, several musicians. We sponsor a dance company. And it's a tremendous part of what we do, so much so that we really love involving our clientele as well. So when your clients come to Cuba, we will show them where these funds are going. And in many cases, it becomes one of the biggest highlights of their trip. Everything we do is guided. It's something that, of course, we feel adds tremendously to the value proposition on almost any trip that you take, but it's incredibly important in Cuba. So it doesn't matter so much about where you're staying or what your accommodations are and that sort of thing. We'll get into the kind of costing and the budgets, but we will always provide a full-time dedicated guide. And just so it's very clear, our concept of guiding is this: the experience should be that you feel the guide is like traveling with a local friend, someone who is very well informed, very well educated, speaks multiple languages, certainly English and Spanish fluently, but they're fun, they're entertaining, they're not a boring lecturer. That is not the idea at all. It's literally, from the time you land in the airport, you meet your guide, they become to you just like it's a close friend traveling with you, but someone who's like so passionate about where they live, and they want to show it to you. They want to show you the parts that you've heard about, things that you've already are aware of, that you may have read somewhere and you really want to see, all the way through the, completely off the beaten path, surprising things that you would never have expected would exist in Cuba. We touched on this a little bit with support for the Cuban people, but traveling with a purpose is an objective of ours also, and we try to make sure that this becomes a part of every single trip, every itinerary. We talk to you, we talk to your clients directly if you'll let us, and learn more about what they might be interested in, what they're passionate about. And then we include these very immersive experiences. And just so, again, so that you understand, everything we do when it comes to the itineraries and these kinds of experiences, there's no extra fees or costs involved with it. It's a package. All of it is included. So whether we're taking them for a day or half a day to meet local farmers and have an experience with them, working on the farm, having lunch with them, having a private jazz session in one of our musicians' homes, cooking alongside a Cuban chef, going on what we call a photo safari with one of the many renowned photographers that exist in Cuba. All of these things are included in trips with us and encouraged. So I'll touch on a few of the things that a lot of people always ask us. First of all, I've already mentioned this. Do you have to be part of a big tour group? No, absolutely not. That's not what we do. Your group can be large, but that's because it's your private group. Otherwise, again, our trips go all the way from one person to as many as you want, but every single trip is private, no specific dates, and absolutely, of course, no rigid itinerary. And just to touch on this a little bit more, because there's a misnomer here too, that legal travel, especially for Americans to Cuba, involves a mandatory itinerary. Forget that, completely forget about that idea. We do create itineraries, of course. It's necessary. It's necessary to make sure that we, everything that someone wants to do and the things that we want to highlight and show people are scheduled. But when you get to Cuba, and we never want any of our clients to feel that they are prisoners to their itinerary. The whole concept of a private custom trip is that it has to allow for flexibility and spontaneity. And our guides understand this. It's part of their training. It's part of what they espouse when they work with our company, and they understand that, you don't really know until you get to a location. It might look good ahead of time. It's something that you're excited about. It's something that you wanted on your itinerary. It may be that once you're experiencing it, you'd rather move on, or you want to cut it short, or what often happens, you're not aware that you ended up being out till 2 o'clock in the morning dancing salsa, because live salsa bands often don't come on stage till midnight. Well, I'll tell you what, you certainly aren't going to want to wake up usually at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. and start touring the next morning. These kinds of things, you have to have this flexibility and spontaneity. It's incredibly important for any trip, but very, very important for a trip to Cuba. Special occasions, yes, I touched on this, and it's just such a special place for this. There's really nothing that we can't arrange, and that we probably haven't arranged at this point, especially after doing it over 9 years. And that's something that adds a lot to a special birthday party or anniversary trip, where we bring in private musical performances. We do unique photo sessions, cigar tastings, rum tastings with the head sommelier of Havana Club in a private tasting room that's not open to the public. We have an incredible level of access, and therefore, even when we do things like a cigar factory tour, for example, you may have heard of clients who've gone to Cuba, gone on these tours. Usually they will be put into a group. That will not happen with us. All tours like this are done privately. Best time of year to visit Cuba geographically, I mean, it's in the Caribbean. It is certainly a very warm, very humid destination, especially in the summers, which is why, you know, fall, let's just say from November through April, tend to be high season. And again, that's mostly based on simply on temperatures, but there's no bad time to go. Even in August, you know, it's the hot, steamy nights in Cuba. It's a very casual destination. So I would say, you know, you can encourage clientele that it is one of those destinations. It's literally year round. You know, there's a hurricane season, of course, as well. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to that, let's call it rainy season. Rainy season is really, you know, rains come in the afternoon for an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then, you know, it clears up, cools everything off. Hurricane season is simply rainy season unless there's literally a hurricane in the area. And again, you know, we've done all kinds of trips throughout every month of the year. So there can be some benefits to going in some of the off seasons as well. I'll touch on a little bit about booking, cancellations, this sort of thing. You know, it used to be pre-2020, before this new environment that we're all existing in, we had I'll be honest, very inflexible cancellation policies. Well, that's, you know, we've thrown that out the window. And I think at this point, we're going to keep this, even, you know, post-COVID. Let's hope we get to that stage where we can literally refer to it as post-COVID. But we are trying to offer as generous a cancellation policy as we possibly can. And just so you know, especially as travel advisors, our mantra, just as yours probably is, we're certainly trying to encourage postponement versus cancel. We want to protect your commissions as well. So when it comes to that, we're going to be as generous and as, you know, open as possible. No penalty for trip postponements. And when I say that, I don't mean that someone has to have COVID. It can be fear of COVID. It doesn't mean that the government is shut down. I mean, if someone is, for whatever reason, needs to postpone a trip, within reason, obviously, we're not talking about the day of departure. We will make it happen, no penalty, and, you know, give them at least a year, maybe even longer to rebook. So, and I can answer more questions about that when we get to the Q&A. A little bit more about the COVID situation. And like the rest of the world, this is certainly in flux. It's changing all the time. In fact, this just happened that Cuba has been testing every single person when they get off the airplane. They provide their own PCR test. So every international arrival, before they even go through immigration, receive a PCR test. And I've already been there twice since the international airport reopened and have gone through it myself. It's very efficient. They have a bunch of nurses stations. You go in, they test you, you get a little card with a number on it. They know where you're staying. They have that information so they can contact you. You go through immigration, off you go. For the time being, your clients will be restricted to their villa or their hotel for the first 24 hours while the test results are coming in. Once they receive a negative test, they're free to move about the country. Not even once they receive it. Within the, you know, once 24 hours passes, they'll be contacted if they're tested positive. Assuming they're negative, they may not even be contacted, but once the 24-hour period has passed, you know, they're free to leave the hotel. What we're doing is bringing Cuba to them during that period. I do not want you to think that, you know, literally the first 24 hours, it's simply going to be whatever's happening in the hotel. So to give you an example, we'll bring someone in and do a private rum tasting, a cigar experience. We might bring a jazz performer in, something like that. So it won't just be, oh, here we are, we're in Cuba, we traveled all this way, we're stuck in the hotel. So again, just for the first 24 hours. And there is something new for American travelers that this also was just announced. Now, for every destination that someone travels to, in order to come back into the US, you have to have a PCR test done within 72 hours of your return into the United States. We will be including that free of charge with our tours, and we'll have it arranged at a special international clinic within Cuba. So the clients will get that test and have the results so that they can freely get back into the United States or any other country that might be requiring that same thing. Okay, quick thing on the commission structure. We pay a minimum of 12% on the full package. And just so you know, selling Cuba is quite lucrative because it is not just an accommodation type destination. We do it all soup to nuts, and therefore we also pay commission on the entire package. So it's the accommodations, it's all of the experiences, the private guide, private driver, transportation, transfers, everything. And like I said, a minimum of 12% will be built in, but we're also happy to work with any of you on a net basis as well. So we can simply give you the base price and you tell us what percent to add on, so that when we send you our proposal, your commission is in there and you can simply refer it back onto your clientele. No one sees, no one will see the commission that's built in. And while we're talking about this as well, I think it's important to note we have moved to a complete B2B structure. We are not, we value so greatly the clientele that we receive from our travel advisors. It's the most important thing to us. We're not trying to be a company for everyone. We are certainly catering to the higher end clientele. And therefore, we do not market to direct to consumer any longer. If someone is grandfathered in with us because they've taken trips, yes, of course, we'll still provide travel for them. But otherwise, we are now working exclusively with travel advisor partners. And it's not up on our site yet, but we will have a special portal, and everyone that works with us will have a password to access that travel advisor portal. Quick thing on the planning time. Cuba's, because again, this is an itinerary-based type of trip, we certainly prefer to have at least a couple of months. However, we never like to say no, and to date, we never have. We've even done, trips over festive with like less than 5 days notice and still made them happen. So, we know based on the type of clientele that you might be working with, they do a lot of things very last minute. We'll make it happen. Do we prefer a longer period of time? Absolutely. But again, just contact us. That's the best thing I can say is, we won't stand on ceremony. Don't be afraid. If someone contacts you and says, I want to go to Cuba in 4 days, and you're immediately thinking, that's just not going to happen, call us first. We'll let you know if we can make it happen, and usually we will. Again, I did already mention this. What's included in our pricing? Pretty much everything. We don't always include meals or every meal. Breakfast is certainly included, and any special meals or meal type activities, for example, a cooking class that involves a meal, would be included. One of the things we don't often do is include all the lunches and dinners, and mainly that's because we want your clientele to be free to order off menu. We don't want them to be stuck on prefix in any situation if we can avoid it. And honestly, food is not expensive in Cuba. Certainly not compared to, the United States or, Europe or most of the rest of the world. So therefore, 90% of like everything they're going to spend on a trip to Cuba will be included, except for some of the meals. We even include most gratuities. We don't include transportation as far as air, because we expect that the flexibility and having you as the travel advisor work on that, but we'll of course give you advice and help you with booking it. Just to give you an idea on price range, again, everything we do is custom and private, so it has to be a range because you know, it will certainly depend on time of year, the number of people traveling, and the type of accommodations. But let's just say spanning the spectrum of, you know, staying in private villas, very small private boutique hotels, all the way through the top 5-star hotel in Cuba. And by the way, there is a true 5-star hotel in Cuba. The Kempinski is there. If you haven't stayed in the Kempinski or had clients stay there, this is, you know, Four Seasons caliber of property. It's absolutely gorgeous in the center of Old Havana. And any boutique hotel that we work with as well are of the highest possible standard. So that range, let's just say $600 to $1,000 per person per day for everything. Okay.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to take it off screen and join you all now.
Thank you very much, David. It was very interesting and very complete. So we do have a few questions, and I was wondering if anybody wants, maybe shall I ask everyone if you want to be showing up on video, or if you want to speak directly. It's up to you. You let me know. Maybe if you want, you can raise your hands and then I can move you to the video, or just at least have everyone to talk as you wish. Huh? So I'm just going to switch up the video. So say goodbye, and then we're going to be offline to do all the questions. Huh?